Good morning. Today we're going to discuss courts in the United States and what they mean to us and what you need to know about them. First of all, we're going to discuss the federal court system here in the United States. Excuse me. On the board, we're going to have the terms, vocab terms that you need to know. What I want you to do, I want you to write the definitions for the following terms in a complete sentence. We have 11 vocab terms, and you need to write those and turn those in, please. We're going to talk about what type of cases are within the Supreme Court system, the federal court jurisdiction. What type of court cases are tried? There are 8 of them. Number 1 are cases involving the United States Constitution. And what does that mean? That means that cases concerning the amendments within the Constitution, if there's a disagreement pertaining to the amendments, that you have to go to court. Say, for example, the amendment for voting rights. And then for some reason, the lower courts within the states have failed to come to an agreement on it, and then it goes to the Supreme Court. And then we have cases that are involved with federal government cases that have been crises that are in the federal government and has to be really determined by the Supreme Court. We have those cases, and that's number 2 cases. The third cases we have involve arguments between state governments. That's primary concern about waterways, water rights, land rights, boundaries, things like that. So the only court system that can determine those cases of cases between 2 states is the federal Supreme Court. Okay, number 4, we have cases that involve lawsuits between individual states. Sometimes that come into criminal laws, or one state do not want to send an individual back to another state for prosecution. Number 5, we have cases involving lawsuits against the federal government. Say, for example, I want to bring a lawsuit because I believe my taxes are too high and that the federal government is unfair to tax me this amount of money and ask me to pay it back. So that's when I will get a lawyer and try to have a lawsuit against the federal government. Number 6, we have cases involving between foreign nations and the United States government. That's, for example, that there's some water rights, say in the Gulf of Mexico, between Mexico and the United States. So in order to solve this case and everything, this case has to go in front of the courts, the federal courts and everything. So probably 10 to 1 is going to end up in the Supreme Court too. But these are cases that involve federal countries, foreign countries, against the federal government of the United States. Then we have cases involving a person who works for the federal government, and for some reason he has committed a crime against the federal government. So we have those cases that have to go into federal courts. Then we have cases that happens on the high seas. And what I mean by happen on the high seas, that means, for example, if you go on a cruise and for some reason a crime is committed, either burglary or theft or murder is committed on the high seas, then that individual has to be tried in a federal court. Now we're going to talk about the kinds of courts that we have, the type of jurisdiction, and the kinds of cases that are heard in each court. Okay, we have district court, and we have the appeal court. In district court, you have the type of the original jurisdiction. And what I mean by the original jurisdiction is the case that you was originally charged with. Say, for example, burglary, murder, conspiracy, things like that. Okay. This is heard by a criminal or civil federal court case, okay? And then we come down. Say, for example, you lost your court case in the district court and you put in for appeal. Your appeal goes to the appeal court, the appellate court. That's the type of jurisdiction that is going to be heard in the appellate court. this is cases appealed from lower courts. So to go to the appellate court is cases that an individual has decided that no, this is not right, I am not guilty, I want to appeal my case. So his case would go in front of the appellate court. Now, deciding cases at the Supreme Court. We all know that the Supreme Court is the highest judicial branch there is in the United States, period. This is the nation court. Factors that influence the court decision is the law. Is the law constitutional? And that's what they're going to go back when they hear court cases that come in front of them into the Supreme Court. And believe it or not, lawyers only have one time to present their case to the Supreme Court for this individual. Then they have cases concerning social conditions. Social conditions as civil rights, individual rights, women's rights, voting rights, things like that. And then we have judicial review of laws and rules of courts. Say, for example, that a lower court has somehow made a decision that the defendant does not feel that it's justified, and he has his lawyer make an appeal to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court is going to hear this individual case. And then we have the decision about personal experience of justices. You'll find that most Supreme Court lawyers or justices had been in the judicial system for several years and have mass experience in handling all types of cases. So they're going to go back to their personal experience on cases that they have heard, cases that they have defended, plus, like I said, the social condition in the country at that time, the view and role of the courts that made that decision in the lower court system. Now we have to have some type of jurisdiction over the Supreme Court too. Limiting of the court's power. Okay, first of all, we want to talk about the executive branch. We know that the executive branch in our government is the president. Okay, what can he do? He does not have to carry out the court ruling. If we look back in history, we'll find out that Worcester versus Georgia, Andrew Jackson did not carry out the court rulings when it said that the Cherokee Indian land in Georgia was their own. In fact, he had the Indians move off that land and move into reservations in the West. Also, you know, the president in the executive branch has responsibility to choose Supreme Court justice. What he has to do, he has to say, okay, I want this individual to go to the Supreme Court when a vacancy appears. He has that opportunity to do that. And also passing new laws, changing one that was ruled unconstitutional. So if the Supreme Court rules that a law is unconstitutional, then it goes back to the president, and the executive branch, which is the president, has the responsibility to change that law or send it back into Congress, legislature, and the Senate to have them change that law. Now, what does the legislative branch has to do with all this? Okay, we have the Senate and we have the House of Representatives. First of all, they have the responsibility of approving or rejecting any nominations for a Supreme Court judge. That means that individual has to come in front of them and they have to talk about their experience and they're asked questions in the legislature or in the Senate about their life, about their ability to be a Supreme Court judge for life. And then we also have impeaching and removing. They have the responsibility, which the House of Representatives has the responsibility of impeaching, and the Senate has the responsibility of removing. So I want you to remember that not just the president can be impeached, also Supreme Court judges and federal judges can be impeached too if there is found cause by the House of Representatives and the Senate. So this is our lesson today. Be sure that you do your vocabulary terms, turn those in for a grade, and we'll go on to review tomorrow. Have a good day.